everybody, welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of the new Wes Anderson film, Asteroid City, which has been described as many as the most Wes Anderson-y movie that Wes Anderson has ever made. So I'm here to talk about whether or not it lives up to that descriptor and whether it is any good. And let's just say, like the film itself, it's a bit of a complicated story. Let's go ahead and dive into it, though. Before going further, though, please make sure to smash the like button, like the 5 on Odyssey, and smash the rumble button as well. And also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time your live stream goes live on the channel. So, as you can see, the general story synopsis is set in a fictional American desert town circa 1955. The itinerary of a junior stargazer space cadet convention organized to bring together students and parents from across the country for fellowship and scholarly competition is spectacularly disrupted by world-changing events. Oh boy, so this movie, I am a big fan, first off, of Wes Anderson's films in general. I am a big fan of his more recent releases versus some of his older ones. I know that some people might prefer his early releases versus the newer ones where he definitely seems to be fitting into a very specific style. There's always been that Wes Anderson style. It's a trope in and of itself. There's been a lot of great comedies, in fact, comedic videos that have been, kind of playing off of that style with whether it's like the 4:3 box aspect ratio or the colors or the way the camera zooms in, all that kind of stuff. And so I found myself enjoying, for the most part, the ones that he has put out recently, even with all of those new things, which aren't necessarily completely there in his earlier works. Asteroid City, in my opinion, is probably the worst of the films that he's made more recently. The only other film I can honestly say I probably did not like to this degree. Again, I don't hate the movie, but I definitely dislike the movie. The last film that I probably disliked this much was the Fantastic Mr. Fox. Some people enjoy that movie. I found it incredibly wandering, meandering, and boring, and that's kind of where this movie also fits into play. I will start off first with just some of the positives. It does still have, I think, that charm that a lot of Wes Anderson films end up having, and a big part of that is not just his writing and directing style, but also the actors that he brings into the fold. I mean, Jason Schwartzman's in this film, Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, Jake Ryan, Jeffrey Wright, Tilda Swinton, Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton, and a plethora of other people. So there are a lot of very, very talented actors. Many of them have, again, been a part of his movies now for a very long time, even to the point where there are some pretty big name actors that have just a few brief moments on screen. And again, that's kind of been the standard for a lot of his movies, especially over the last decade or so. The one issue that I have ultimately, though, when it comes to this film specifically in regards to the acting, is that it almost feels like he has, with this movie, reached that point that some other filmmakers have reached, where it's at the point where it's, hey, look at all of these amazing people that I have in to do weird and quirky things. That's kind of where this film seems like and feels like it is, because even though there is some underlying story that has some narrative parts that are interesting, especially the way it's being told, one of my favorite parts and roles in the film is probably Bryan Cranston's role as kind of the host, introducing the story in a very unique way, and I was really enjoying that. But when you get to about the midway point of the film and the story has yet to really take off, it really leaves you kind of wondering, why am I watching this movie, except for seeing a bunch of friends or people who have always wanted to be in Wes Anderson movies, acting like typical Wes Anderson characters in a Wes Anderson-y way. Like, that's kind of how this film ultimately feels like, and it really, I think, especially story-wise, really comes off that way when you get to the very end, because it is broken into a 3-act structure, and whereas the first 2 acts have structure to them, the third act just kind of goes off the rails. So they are moving the story and the plot along. There's a lot of subplots and other things, as far as character motivations are concerned, throughout those first 2 acts. And then you get to the third act, and it just feels like everything goes crazy, and not in a way where you're like, oh, there are a bunch of people on screen going crazy right now, and I'm loving every second of it, but rather whoa, wait a minute, this story has now kind of just stopped. So it's like chugging along at a pretty slow pace. That's the other issue that I have with this movie, is that the pacing of the film, you definitely feel it towards you get to the middle of the movie. It feels very, very long, even though it's not one of the longer films that has come out more recently at 105 minutes, so about an hour and 45. So again, on the shorter end compared to the 2.5-hour behemoths that we've seen from a lot of other major studios, but that pacing does definitely catch up with you over the course of the movie. And so when you have that kind of pacing that's already making things feel somewhat slow, especially as you get further and further along, to have a third act and then an epilogue after that just feels so disjointed and just very much a head-scratching, what is the purpose of any of this? I don't know. There are some people out there that might end up trying to find meaning from that, try to say, but that's the whole point of it, is for it to not make any sense and for it to be this or for that. And for me, it just honestly seems like that would be a level of cope, right? Trying to say that there's meaning there, that the story was meant to go in this direction, that maybe you just miss certain pieces and parts. And hey, missing certain pieces and parts, I can absolutely admit that that could very well be the case. But just based on my own experience of going into the movie, and as someone who typically does like those weird, quirky stories that Wes Anderson tells, this feels very incomplete. You get to the ending and you just don't quite understand why all the parts and all the pieces that have led you to this point have led to the ending that you end up getting. Again, it feels like you're being told a story in a very interesting, clever way, a very Wes Anderson way, and then it kind of just goes off the rails like a derailed train, and you just honestly have no idea what is going on in the process. So even though this film does have some good elements, as I mentioned, there are some pretty interesting story elements that I enjoyed, especially the way it was shot. So kudos to the cinematography. But even the cinematography at times almost felt like an inside joke. It almost felt like they were trying to be as campy, over the top, as stereotypical Wes Anderson as you possibly could. And that included even the filmmaking, right? Whether it was having the zoom in at certain points, having the camera go at a certain angle to try and include a character who's randomly coming in off the screen, right? Everything just feels very much, again, this very stereotypical, typical Wes Anderson style. And I can see why a lot of people have kind of gone after this movie as being that, because you feel it. You absolutely feel it. And even though there are certain elements, and the acting, of course, is there, that really makes you at least invested in the story to a point, because of its meandering pace and because of the weird way in which it ends, where, again, it's not even that the decision to conclude a story in a specific way, right? Like you're leading to a logical conclusion, then you decide to end here. It's more of, hey, you're going along this certain story, and now we're just going to stop that story, and then instead we're just going to kind of jump ahead to a random point, and then we're going to finish it. Like, that's how it came across. So it's, again, not even like a subversive element where you would say, oh, I thought it was going this direction, but it went this direction. How, interesting, how nuanced. It was rather I have no idea what in the world is actually going on at this point, and why it feels like there's pages of the story actually missing. So overall, I think that there are some good things in here. The cinematography, even though it is very typical of most Wes Anderson movies, it is still pretty crisp, pretty clean. Many of the transitions are also very good, even though there is some pretty good editing as far as one scene to the next. The pacing of the film, which is what editing really comes into play, definitely does make the film feel like it drags along. That could also very much be the story rather than the actual editing itself. And the acting, even though it is there, and there's some really great performances in the film and very fun performances, and again, a lot of those typical fun, fanciful Wes Anderson type things, I do think that it goes a little bit overboard for the sake, and at the expense rather, of the story itself. So if I had to give this film a grade, I'm going to go ahead and give this film a C-. I, again, don't see myself ever wanting to rewatch this movie, even though there were moments from the beginning, but then the first 30 minutes or so, I was very much locked into the story. I was said, okay, I'm buying into this. This is a Wes Anderson movie, and I know exactly what I'm going to be getting because of that. And so there were a lot of things in there that I really enjoyed. But then as the story goes on and it just meanders and then ends in a very odd way, with not odd in a Wes Anderson way, but in just a general storytelling way, I kind of just left the movie theater saying, I have no idea what I just watched or what the purpose of what I just watched was. And maybe you feel that way about other Wes Anderson films, but I do feel that the other ones at the very least feel like there is a self-contained story, even as weird as it might end up being. So a C- for this movie. I don't really think this is a movie that is worth your time to go see in theaters personally, but hey, if you're a Wes Anderson film, you might end up enjoying certain parts of it. Again, there are definitely certain parts of this movie that I think are fun and are that typical genius that Wes Anderson has. I just feel like it kind of let the story get away from him with this one. But what's thoughts about this movie? Have you seen Asteroid City? Did you think it was good? Did you think it was bad? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, like the find my iTunes, smash the rumble button. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a special shout out to all of my members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above, starting off first with my members over on Patreon: Father Luca Illick, Heimir Irie Hymason, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Chat Reviews, check out his YouTube channel by the same name, Laura, the Monomator General's Story, Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name as well. To my Subscribe Star peeps, Zine Voders, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, The Beer Guru, and ZK-Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my Locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, and Robert Barnes, the amazing lawyer. So thank y'all very much for being my supporters at the Keep of the Bifrost level and above. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, go ahead and check out that top link in the video description below to find out ways to sign up to support the channel and to be able to get access to things like the shoutouts, but also to giveaways. I have an exclusive giveaways channel on my Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff, and also access to an exclusive podcast that I do once or twice a month, depending on what I'm able to get accomplished, especially over the course of this crazy, crazy busy summer. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.